separate his children.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's beautiful.
Jordan, you have such a unique approach to really getting a film like this out because you're competing with Disney on the same weekend. This is July 4th, everybody. So it's because it's the sound of freedom, right? It's about freeing these kids. But tell us a little bit about the plan you came up with and how's it going and what can people do?
Yeah. So, first of all, like summer's the most difficult time to take something to theaters. It's the blockbuster season. The week before us is Indiana Jones. The week after is Mission Impossible. And so it's very difficult to not only book screens in theaters, but to maintain them in any meaningful way. And so when we actually, it was actually kind of a miracle that this all came together because we've known Tim for a long time. And then Tim reached out to us a little over 3 months ago. And he said, guys, I feel a gravity. I feel an energy around what you're doing at Angel. Because he saw that we were doing His Only Son in theaters and we were starting to push that in a meaningful way. And he's like, I want to explore what this looks like. And so he started pulling everybody together on his team, Eduardo and Jaime and Alejandro and all these different individuals and Jim Caviezel. And he's like, guys, come out to the office. You got to come meet these guys. And I remember telling Tim, I was like, man, we would love to. Let's get into the guild, which we did. And it scored super high. And I said, we would absolutely love to get this out to the world. But man, it's going to be so hard to pull all these parties together. And Tim's like, Jordan, have faith. He's like, this is coming together. This is coming together. And he just kept telling me that over and over and over again. And the miraculous thing is from the time we grouped everybody together, when we inked a deal was 5 days.
That's incredible.
It's unheard of.
That's divine. Everybody's aligned. You have a higher mission, higher purpose. When you guys first told me, I'm an executive producer as well, we're going to put this on July 4th. I was like, are you really time to do this? And we're competing with the biggest movies in the world. That's when all of them come out.
Yes.
But your approach to this, I got to say, besides higher guidance and all this, your approach to this, Jordan, I think is extraordinary. So please share with people about how you're helping to explode this so we can have enough power on that opening weekend to make this happen. We're not it's not about economics for us. I'm donating all my money back to it. Anything that comes to it goes right back to take care of and save more kids.
100%.
So tell people about your strategy because I think it's brilliant and it appears to be working.
Yeah. So with His Only Son, well, we had done a couple of theatrical releases, partnering with Fathom with The Chosen. We did Christmas with The Chosen, and then we did episodes 1 and 2. And we kind of thought it was kind of a weird bananas idea to just do episodes in theaters. But what we did want to do is we wanted to understand that world. And so I remember my brother Jeff telling the whole team, he's like, guys, we're going to do this, but we are going to collect as much data as physically possible so we can understand this black box that exists right now to us. Because as a studio, we had made all of our business in streaming, merchandising, that entire world. And so we did those. We started to understand how to crack that nut. And then we decided to go, but we realized that there was a cap on the way we were doing it with Fathom Events. And so we decided to go, we need to go direct with theaters. And we launched in the spring of this year, His Only Son. And the 3 things that I think are unique to our model is that the guild obviously finds the sleeper hits. Like His Only Son had been turned down by major studios. No one was interested in it. It was a small production budget, but it was a beautiful film. And the guild, without knowing what the production budget said, this is amazing. We want to see this. And then 2, we started building an audience through crowdfunding. Instead of going into a big bank or a big studio and saying, hey, cut us a check for $1, $2, $3 million for P&A. So P&A is the prints and advertising. Yeah. That's an old industry term for basically marketing. And that's kind of the most coveted money in Hollywood because it's the last money in and first money out. It's the most likely of getting a return. Yeah. And we said, instead of going to one person to cut a check, let's go to the crowd because that's how we've done, we crowdfunded The Chosen, we crowdfunded Dry Bar, we crowdfunded all of our TV shows. Let's go to the crowd and crowdfund His Only Son's P&A budget. And so we crowdfunded $1.2 million in less than 100 hours. And we were like, whoa, that was way faster than we expected. And then the third element that was really powerful is those investors ended up bringing what we believe based off of our data, 10 to 20 other people to the movie theater. So now you've got your grassroots movement going. And then the last element is Angel's background. And Tony, you know this more than most people with, the Harmon Brothers agency and all the stuff that, we've been involved in one capacity or another. Our background is direct response marketing. We know that world backwards and forwards. And so we know how to spend money really efficiently and then start building the brand to where we can start getting into efficient brand marketing versus really inefficient brand marketing. And so we broke into the top 3 of the box office in spring, in Easter, which was, the third most busy time of the year. And so everybody's like, whoa, his only son, top 3 in the box office. And I remember big studios reached out and being like, how much do you guys spend on P&A? And we're like, well, our initial launch was a little over 1.2 million, it's like 1.5. And they were like, we've never broken in the top 3 in the box office for less than 11 to 12 million dollars. That's impossible.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly
and so what we've done is we've created this mechanism between the guild finding the sleeper hits, building the grassroots movement, and us spending that money extremely efficiently. We're seeing with Sound of Freedom now that's scaling massively. And so our goal with Sound of Freedom is very unique. There are 2 million kids that are trafficked every year, and that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
And those 2 million children, we are trying to, for opening week, to get 2 million people into seats to represent those 2 million people and start this movement that will hopefully end this atrocity throughout the world. And so you can go to angel.com. I actually think we have a URL for Tony, and I can't remember what it is now in my brain.
That's angel.com/war room. Angel.com/war room.
Anyway, so but that being said, that you go there, angel.com, or I think you can also go to /freedom if it's easy to remember. But that being said, that URL tracks, you'll see real time and we have a conservative number on there. I think we're at just under 500,000 tickets sold. Again, that's conservative. And it's really starting to scale into those last 9-10 days. And so it's really important that people do 2 things. That if they have the resources, go buy tickets right now, because that sends the signal to people and the theaters and gives them the courage to say, we're going to give more screens to Sound of Freedom. And that means they're pulling screens away from potentially Indiana Jones or Mission Impossible or whatever it is. So we have to give them that courage to be able to do that by buying tickets in the pre-sales. But the second thing is being able to pay it forward for someone else.
Yes.
So if someone doesn't have the resources, they can go. So we've already gifted from people who have paid it forward over, I think, 150,000 tickets around the United States. And we're just getting started. Okay. Wow. These are people who have paid it forward, $10, $15, $60, $100, whatever it is. And they're saying, I have the resources. I'm going to not only buy my tickets, but I'm going to pay it for someone else. And then the last thing is, if you don't have the resources, go to angel.com/freedom and you can claim a free ticket. Like we want this. We do not want money to be the reason that anybody in the United States and long-term in the world doesn't see this film.
That's so exciting. I mean, it's amazing, Deb. I think you guys are ahead about 25% right now, at least in pre-sales.
Yes.
From Able Lost Ark.
And the last week is the biggest week. The last week is the biggest week for sure. We're already seeing, week over week from last week, we're up 400%. So it's growing very drastically.
I hope that those that are watching, that's the main reason I did this. I want you to see the film, but I want you to get as many people as you can. And if you can buy 10 tickets or 5 or whatever and donate to friends or donate to Angel Studios /freedom, you'll be able to
angel.com/freedom.
Get out to the people that can make this happen, and so they can attend and experience it and make it happen. Listen, this is such an exciting opportunity to take the darkest horrors. I mean, people don't realize this is one of the largest criminals, the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. Maybe you can comment on, Tim, what do you think, what do governments need to do? What has to be done on that side of it? And we as citizens, we can push those that we know in Congress or Senate, or those we can reach out to. What do you think has to change in order to really break the back of this trafficking epidemic?
The one word is prioritize. It's not a priority. Like it should be. I keep thinking back to Abraham Lincoln, who says, "You started this war, you little lady with the big book." She changed history because she influenced him. So right now there's about 5 drug agents, federal U.S. drug agents for every 1 anti-child trafficking agent, which is insane because you can sell a bag of cocaine once. You can sell a child 10, 20 times over a 24-hour cycle. We have to change the priority. And the only way to do it in a republic that we're blessed to live in is get loud, get so loud that it shakes the foundations of Washington, D.C. and state governments. And they say, that's it. People are yelling. People are mad at us. We've got to switch this. We've got to switch this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The experience of being down there and having a child be chained to a bed and doing tricks 5 or 6 or 7 times a day, and an 8 or 9 or 10 or 12-year-old child is completely insane. It was the ugliest experience of my life, Tim, and it was also the most beautiful, because seeing these kids on the other side was a whole nother experience. And then we had another group, Tim, we sent the plane down. The first place they got to be in America after being rescued by you was here at our house. So they came here to the house and they're going swimming and bowling and playing basketball. And they were like realizing, oh my God, I have a life again. But let's talk a little bit about the aftercare, because Tim, you have a really special experience in that. We went down there together and I got to see the kind of work and wanted to contribute to it. You end up with one of your children from that group, but tell us a little bit about the aftercare and tell us a little bit about what happens to these kids that you save afterwards as they go through, being brought back into society after such a horrific experience.
So there's no rescues, without the aftercare, without the healing. That has to happen or nothing happens. And so we do a lot ahead of time before any rescue operation. We have the beds, we have the players, we have the homes already in place so the kids can go immediately there and start getting all the healing and that they need. And we're trying to innovate all the time. Like, everyone's healing experience is so individual that we try to provide all the tools and let them choose with their coach, with their counselor, with their therapist. And you got to experience that. I'm glad you brought that up, Tony, because that was one of the most emotional moments of my life, was going around before we did the operation with Tony. Once we did it, we had to run. So we took a few days before to visit some of the aftercare homes where these girls were going to go. Yeah. And everywhere I went, and I hope I don't embarrass you at all, Tony, but everywhere we went, I would watch Tony give, but not just a little bit, like way too much. Like, I hang out with a lot of people of means, but this is beyond, like, wow. Like, there's certain things you might not be able to do now. It was that much, but it was every place we went to. And the final place we went to, Tony didn't even know, but the two kids that ran to him, and I talked about how they climbed up Mount Tony. They were just all over Tony because I had told them who he was. This is Papa Blanc's friend. They call me Papa Blanc, Daddy, White Daddy. I don't know why they call me that, but when they got back home, I said, just call me Daddy. You got to stop. I don't know where you get this. It might be against the law here. I don't know. But in Haiti, it was okay, apparently. So, but I watched Tony, and he didn't even know that those were my kids. I hadn't really introduced them yet because there were so many kids, right? But I watched my kids so excited because they'd seen pictures, because I see them and I tell them who's coming, and we were waiting. It took us 4 years to adopt these kids. There were two kids we rescued on February 19th, 2014, in our first operation in Haiti. That's also in a documentary, Operation Toussaint. And I watched Tony take the woman in charge around the corner. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm my whole body, I'm getting chills right now. I was like, my kids are going to be okay, because you don't know really, are they just putting the nice clothes on the kids when daddy shows up? Are they really being taken care of? Do they really have what they need? And I watched Tony go around the corner. So I go around this corner, but I'm so excited because I'm like, this is going to be good. And I'm just listening. And he just, he asks her how much it's going to cost for a year. And I'm like, you're going to give a whole year? And she says this, and it's a big number. It's a lot of kids. He says, okay, I'm going to write you a check right now for 2 years. And when you're done with that, call me and we'll do the next 2 years. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, my kids are going to be home like within a year. Like, they're going to have everything they need,
That's so awesome.
And then I asked you later about it, Tony.
Thank you for that, but I wasn't asking for you to tell the story what I did.
No, I know you weren't. I know you weren't.
The beauty of the aftercare, how these kids change. And then, but I wanted you to bring up, I want people to sense of who you are as a man. You've adopted two of those children yourself. It wasn't about me, but thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, but Tony, at the same time,
tell people how many kids you have, and tell them what happened, and with your wife, your incredible wife, both of you, how you brought these two children back. I mean, you're out here on the road. You have a pretty large family. So please, thank you for sharing that. But what I was really looking to hear is tell people about the aftercare and what happens to these kids, because it's one thing to get them rescued, it's another to get them integrated. And there's a phenomenal work that's being done. There's so many different approaches, but I'd love you to share that. But finish the story from the standpoint of you, not me. Tell them what you did, and please tell them about your family, the size of your family, and what your wife said when you first started talking about this.
But to your point, Tony, you said you want them to hear Tim's heart. I think that probably reflects Tim's heart more than even talking about what he did. Is that he first went to talk about what you did. But yes, finish the story.
So thank you. So these kids, after the first rescue operation, and we were only 6 months into this endeavor, and I was broke. I mean, I had enough money to last till June, and this was February. And, we didn't find the little boy we went to find. And then the father, who you've met, you've been gracious enough to bring him on your stage even. And he goes and takes home 8 of the kids that were rescued in the name of his son, even though his son wasn't there. And I'm just like, who is this man? And I go call my wife that night on February 19th, 2014. I know that because that's the birthday they gave my kids, because when we rescued them, they had no papers.
February 9th.
February 19th.
Oh, 19th.
Is the birthday they gave them. And so I called Catherine. I said, you won't believe this guy. He took all these kids home. Da, 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 da. And Catherine goes, well, what about those 2 kids that you fell in love with? Because they were the main kids that we used in the sting operation, their brother and sister. And like, oh, their parents are dead. And, they're in an orphanage. She's like, I'm their mother. I'm like, yeah, you're the mother of everybody. Yeah. They're like, no, I'm going to be their mother. Bring them home.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I said, Catherine, we don't have any money. Like, but then
I told people how many kids you had before you adopted them.
That we had 6. So, and then 6 and now 7, 8. And then another one came accidentally, 9. So we got 9 now, but I didn't want to get that jeopardize my salvation speech again. So I just accepted it. I'm like, don't say it. I know.
Yes, Catherine, we will do it.
We will do it. And it's, you know what? It's the greatest blessing, because these are the happiest kids, Colleen.
Oh, they're so great.
And every day they remind me why we're doing this, because if these kids, I know the trajectory, I think about this often. My daughter Colleen would probably be dead right now. I don't think a child in Haiti who's an orphan makes it past 13 years old, or should have been trafficked. Same with my son. And instead they're happy and they're running around and playing sports and all this. And that's the hope. Like, this can be any of those kids. Any of those kids have that bright of a future, but we got to get them out and get them healed. And so that's why that aftercare piece is so important. And I want to say, Operation Triple Take, which is the operation depicted in The Sound of Freedom, those kids are now young adults. Yeah. And they have their own foundation now. They're all together, and we support them. We give them microloans. One of them has actually done their own rescue. One of the kids we rescued adopted a child who was born out of human trafficking, and he saved the mother. Now he's raising this baby. Another one, her name is Angie. She's one of our spokespeople, and she just got a contract from the Colombian Navy. The same Navy that provided the boats for the CTI agents to jump out and do the rescue. And they kept track of her. They just gave her the contract to sew. She's a seamstress, to sew all the new recruit uniforms. So it's working. Like the aftercare, it's working. And we got to see it first and foremost with the kids from Sound of Freedom.
I love that.
It speaks so much, doesn't it, Jordan, about who this man is, and he keeps giving his wife credit. She deserves it. She's extraordinary. But you two as a couple, because every time you go out, she's got to wonder if you're going to make it back. I'm not being overly dramatic. It's just a fact. And you risk your life that every time. And we've had some late nights when you were going through some rough times, brother, and seeing you just find your way through that because there was something higher you were to serve more than yourself, son. I'm deeply touched, and I love you dearly for all that you stand for and all that you are. And I'm so grateful, Jordan, that you've joined forces with him in such a powerful way to get this message out. Would you share one more piece before we go? Tell people a little bit about what happened in the Ukraine, because people see the war, they don't see the other side of it. And also, just maybe for 2 seconds, because the story touched me so much, the young person in Iraq, I believe it was, who they were draining the blood out of them, because people don't understand that these kids don't just get trafficked and pushed through sexual slavery. But some of these children, ladies and gentlemen, it's pretty horrific. This is not in the film for you to watch. So don't panic. Go see the film, but you got to know. They literally, they sell their body parts. And
That's right.
They drain their blood. It's insane.
It is insane.
A baby's heart, a young child's heart's worth $250,000. And they can steal this child or buy this child for someone for a few $1,000s. So would you just share, real quickly, a little bit about what happened in Ukraine and what you're doing there, just so people have a sense of the size and scope of what you guys have grown to? But also what happened in Iraq, for example, that you know who I'm speaking of, I think, that child that was shouldn't have survived. And where's that child today? Because it's an aftercare example of a family adopting. It's just so touching. Amazing story. So one of the biggest, most amazing operations I've ever been a part of was last year. We went to Ukraine to just get orphans out because they were in the war zone and people weren't taking care of them and people were running away. And we ended up working with aerial recovery. And you know, Brittany and Jeremy Locke, Tony, and we were able to move with their leadership 6,000 women and children out. But while we were there, we found a pedophile trafficking ring. They were taking advantage of vulnerable children whose parents were dead, and these guys were a political party, scary group.
They were fugitives from the law out of Holland, and they had set up shop in Ecuador and Mexico. And there's a docuseries, and Tony and Sage are actually producing it. Mel Gibson's also involved in this. He was one of the people who gave me the intel to find the kids. Craziest story. We blew through 6 countries, 3 continents, 4 months, took down an international pedophile ring and rescued hundreds, in preventative rescue, thousands. It ended taking down a sex hotel, a child sex hotel. They were saying little boys in Ecuador, 10 years old and younger, pedophiles could show up and have their way with them. And Tony knows so much about the case because whenever I'm traveling to Europe, I used to stop over in Miami, and I'm giving you video. I'm giving Tony and Sage briefings like as I'm going transversing the country and getting blessings from Tony and Sage. And making sure my mental stability was allowing me to not break. And so we're going to have that coming out soon in a docu-series called The Hidden War. And then this other example.
Tell me an example into this, because when people think about war, they don't realize that what war creates is an opportunity for these people to traffic children like crazy, because there's so much disruption. So many children become, they have no parents. But tell them the story you shared with me about this young child in Iraq.
Yeah, so this little boy, it's crazy. So ISIS, when they rolled in and they took advantage and took all the minority religious children, Christian Yazidis, the same thing's happening in Africa, and they're setting up these like baby factories where they'll impregnate women and make the babies just to sell their body parts. One little boy in particular, who that was happening to him, he was kidnapped actually at 4 or 5 years old until he was 12, and they would just slowly suck like the spinal fluid, and they would sell it. This is a witch doctor-y kind of satanic ritual stuff where they sell the blood and people like drink it and think they're being empowered. And it's a real thing. And this kid had lost all use of, by the time he was 11 years old, he looked like he was 7, and he couldn't use his limbs. And we were able to get him to a doctor in Salt Lake at the Children's Shriners Hospital. And they did an experimental surgery and fixed him. They broke every bone in his body. I was there just weeping at his side with Catherine as he was healing from this. And he just moaned and just the pain, but he was casted up, his whole body. But then they took the cat and it worked, and he walks now, and he rides horses and he rides bikes. And while he was here, a family in Utah got to know him, and they've adopted him. Oh, and so now awesome. He's home, and it's like, wow, again, it can work. They said it was impossible. He would never move, and now he's happy living in a family. And
has a family.
So there's hope, and that's the point. Is there's hope, and I hope people leave Sound of Freedom knowing there's hope. There's a solution. There's a light in this darkness.
Yes, it's really a story of good versus evil, where you see good does prevail over evil, but it requires awareness and action, and this, hopefully that's what the film's doing. Jordan, any last message you want to give the audience here about this film?
Yeah, Steve Jobs once said that the most powerful person on earth is a storyteller, and we have the opportunity right now as a nation and as a world to get these stories through Sound of Freedom out into the world. And the power of stories is that the stories that are predominantly told today is what our culture will look like in 20 or 30 years.
Yes.
And we have a responsibility now to make sure that our culture in 20, 30 years does not have trafficking in it.
Yes.
And so this movie is so important to get out into the world, to educate the people on the gravity of this issue, but also to bring awareness so that the organizations, there's this saying that all ships rise with the rising tide. And there are so many organizations throughout the world, like the ones Tim has run and you've been a part of, Tony, and many, many others that are trying to solve these problems. But with awareness, with this film, the resources we believe at Angel, and the reason we're taking this on is we believe as we drive this awareness through our distribution, that the resources will pour into these organizations that are adept at solving these problems. And so a lot of people, like Tim said, there is hope. There is plenty of resources, and there's plenty of good in the world. We just need focus, concentrated focus to solve these problems.
And I want to add this, Tony, because you've been great at supporting many organizations in this fight, which I applaud. In fact, some people at OUR, they might be mad at me for saying this, but they were insisting that we put the OUR logo at the end of the film. And Angel and me and Eduardo said, no, No. The last thing we want is to make this about any one group.
Yes.
Because I'll be honest, OUR is not the best at every situation. The Nazarene Fund is not the best at every situation, but IGM might be, or 821, or Free a Girl, or Ariel. We have to be able to be honest and do the right thing by the children, not by any one institution. So I'm grateful for that
100%.
that vision. And I know you run your philanthropy that way too, Tony, and it's the right way to do it. We have to empower all organizations to be a brighter light. So
amen.
You both are such bright lights. I can't wait for people to see this film. If you're watching right now, please go see it. Go see it in the theater. Don't wait for it to be at home. And please spread the word. You can share the what do you call it, the trailer. But most importantly, go to angel.com/freedom and get yourself some tickets, or you can order them. They can also order them at the theater, correct? But they can
absolutely. Any major ticketing app, you can order tickets, but angel.com/freedom. And we are so grateful, Tony, for you and for what you've done. People don't realize that this interview is obviously impactful to your audience, but Tony behind the scenes has been maneuvering and helping Angel and Sound of Freedom in such magnificent ways. So Tony, thank you. Thank you for your heart.
Kind. You're very kind. This issue takes all of us, and I'm grateful for the incredible work you're doing. And Tim, I can't thank you again for just being such a good soul and for the courage you've displayed and how you've continued to pursue no matter what obstacles in front of you. And I think when all of you watch the film, if you didn't watch anything else, it's an action thriller, and it is true story, and it is good, surpassing and dissolving and destroying the evil. And it's like based on a true story. It is a true story that'll move you. So please go check it out. Please spread the word. God bless to both of you. And we're looking forward to seeing July 4th be this incredible opening that brings millions of people to paying attention to this incredible, incredible opportunity to make change. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Sound of Freedom is one of those films that can legitimately change this world. So we want to ignite a fire in audiences and open their eyes to the dark reality of millions of children that need our help. Let's make this film a historic event and the start, the end of child trafficking. Theaters across this country are already selling out. Pre-order your tickets today, and you can send the message that God's children are no longer for sale.